Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Mayfield and Friends. Today I am joined by BuddhaPuck. Hopefully, I pronounced your name right.
Yeah, bud.
All right. Tell us who you are, what kind of account you play, and all that kind of fun stuff.
So my name is BuddhaPuck, and I am a maxed UIM player. I streamed for a very long time before giving that up due to just the busyness of IRL. But whilst I was streaming pretty consistently for about 2.5 years, I brought some really fun, relatable kind of, you know, like friendly new style content to the UIM sphere. And this is back when not a lot of people were on the game mode, so it still had a lot of the panache of being like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy! I could never." And through that, got to really have a strong seat at the table as far as like the community of UIMs. Went on to host the first and second ever UIM bingo as community events, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's been a really great time over the years playing with all the homies.
Great. And I've also been a part of a UIM bingo or two, so thank you for getting those started. It's been really
Yeah,
really good community events.
absolutely. I mean, I definitely am echoing quite a few personalities and saying like we wouldn't play this game if not for the community. Like that's not a shocker to pretty much anyone. We all love this dumb cookie clicker, but we love it because we're playing it together, right? So
Exactly.
those styles of events are really what does it for me and quite a few other people in the community I know. So I was really happy to help facilitate those.
And I think it's funny you bring that up like right away. I was having this conversation with somebody in my own clan chat the other day about how half of us log on not just to play the game, but to talk with people we log on. It's cool to log in and like see your friends list. Like the first, like, obviously you scroll your friends list if depending on how many people you have added, and if a whole page is full, it's like, I wonder what these guys are up to today.
Oh, absolutely. It's the shared journey that is what sets this game apart, I think.
So you've talked about you're a maxed UIM. So
Mhm.
what brought you to the UIM game mode? You are one of, I think you're the fourth UIM on the cast so far. No, you're the third. You're the third one.
Mhm.
So what
So
brings you to this?
So I started playing old school RuneScape after old school RuneScape's fifth birthday anniversary.
So you're
Um,
late to the game.
yeah, I was late to old school. I've been a long term RuneScape player. Like I've played from the time I was 6 years old. Played, through most of the lifespan of RS2. When EOC hit, I was really disenfranchised along with, the majority of the population. I gave EOC like a slight chance, but it was just too different. And so I ended up leaving the game and then didn't play really until old school turned 5. What's really funny though is I watched from day one old school content. Like I would watch it religiously. I was very like hip to the progression of the game and a lot of the personalities. But I didn't step back in just because I knew I would be signing away so many hours as soon as I made the account. But after the 5th year anniversary hit, I finally caved and made an account. And at that point, I was like, "Oh, like I'm not gonna play too seriously. Like let me try this Ultimate Iron Man thing. Like that sounds like a fun, extra level of like challenge and problem solving." And the biggest reason why I, chose it and kind of glommed onto it is outside of RuneScape, my favorite just game genre is roguelikes and roguelites.
Hmm.
And I think UIM has a lot of that like genre integrated into it because everyone will wipe their UIM. Like that is just a part of the game mode. You try your best, but you can't play a game for 8 years straight and never once make a mistake, right? And so the roguelike elements of UIM is, even if I wipe billions of gold worth of items, like I have all my stats, I have my quests, I have my POH, you have all of these like permanent unlocks as a like life by life progression. And so that kind of long form roguelike attitude of UIM, I just fell head over heels for.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I like the comment about playing this game for 8 years, not making a mistake, because we see hardcore Ironmen, we see crazy high level hardcores go out all the time still. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
I think a lot of us like love watching like the big hardcores and be like, okay, who is next? Who is the next to drop? So I think the last big one to drop was, I don't remember who. I was it Nex or was it somebody else?
Um, I guess it depends, and I don't watch the hardcore space too terribly much, but I know Lake's most recent hardcore
Oh,
ate it at TOA
I
post-release.
I did see that clip. Yep.
And I mean, it's one of those things where it's like hardcore is such an interesting mode, and people will give it a lot of grief as far as like, oh, I would never play a permadeath mode in a game that has such shitty servers. And like that's true, but I think a similar thing could be said for UIM where it's like, oh, I would never play a game mode that has such high risk because potentially, down the road I make a mistake and fuck up and lose progress, quote unquote. But my whole thing is like, if you make a hardcore, you are signing up to die down the road. If you make a UIM, you are signing up to wipe down the road. Like those are the rules of engagement. So what? We all agreed to those terms. Now shut up and play the game that you want to play. Like you're playing it for the extra challenge or extra, like danger in the case of hardcore, willingly and hopefully knowledgeably. Like I don't think when we look at some of the like cream of the crop UIMs or hardcores, anyone has an attitude of like invincibility. Like everyone knows, and that's the fun of it, right?
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely like, I think the like people we joke and say high adrenaline gameplay, but we had a short conversation before we started this, and I talked about almost wiping my account at some point, and in a sense, I did wipe a few of my untradeable items I had to go get back, and the heart pounding rush of running back to get it all back before somebody in the wilderness saw my stuff, or before I kept dying and just lost it over time. It is like, it really got me to be like, okay, now how am I going to mitigate this risk for the next time?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I think just you're talking about mitigation of risk. That is one of the biggest things for UIM in general, because like we've said, you will wipe. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way that you play a game for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, and there isn't that, uncalculable, instance where, oh, my power went out, et cetera, et cetera. And oh, that was just the one time that I was death banked for like 15 minutes. Like it does happen. Every time you log in, you're rolling the dice as long as you're behaving in any way that could conceivably be risky. Like I feel like there's a lot of players that for good reason will play in the, like, oh, I'm gonna death bank these items because like what are the chances dot dot dot.
Exactly.
And those chances they just inevitably will occur assuming that you keep logging in, right?
Exactly, and like you said before, thinking of it like not just I lost everything, I'm depressed, but like
Hmm.
I lost everything, but I still have this point to rebuild from. I have this point
Absolutely.
where I can start, especially with many people, especially in your case, with having so much experience in like the PBM scene as well as the community itself. So like, oh, it's been 3 years since I did a Dragon Warhammer. Who knows how to like? Who knows what the meta is? You can just ask like, hey, do you know like, is there a safe spot meta nowadays, or should I just go to the shaman room like I used to and just murk them to death?
Yeah. I have wiped several times on this account, I wiped like a mini wipe super early on. I wiped like kind of a mid game wipe that like stung a little bit. And then about a year ago, I had a late game wipe that was like really, really fucking painful. And that is the scale of wipe where some players have hung up their gaming career. They're like, yeah, I've put 7,000 hours into my UIM, but like I just can't be fucked to go get that Warhammer. I can't be fucked to go make another 8,000 Sarah brews,
Mm-hmm.
and then that motivation is just dead. And and this will tie back full circle into what we were saying of motivation to play the game is like, I love the community. Did that wipe hurt? Yes. Am I still going to play the game? Yes. If nothing else, other than it's a reason for me to stand by the water cooler and talk to the people that I love. Like, yeah, I'll rebuild because I want to go raid with my friends. Um, I will go get that Warhammer again, to spec Ulm and continue the gear progression cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we love this community game.
Exactly. And that's a fantastic outlook. And I want to kind of dive back into what you said in your initial start of playing this game. So you said you played most of the way through RS2, and then you kind of quit shortly after EOC. What was your experience like in RS2 and like RuneScape? If you ever touch anything of RuneScape Classic.
I was not around for Classic. I got into RS2 like very early days of RS2, because my older sister had been shown the game from one of our older like second cousins, that was maybe like 20 when we were like 6 and 8. I still remember logging into RS2 through the mini clip portal
Mm-hmm.
like it was a fucking flash game. Like this is quintessential like childhood nostalgia, as I'm sure a lot of our fellow scapers fell in love with the game. But yeah, my experience back in the day playing, I was the quintessential noob. Like I remember main handing a granite maul while wearing a spiny helmet because for some reason I thought if I wore a spiny helmet and trained combat, that is how you train Slayer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like it's so fucking funny looking back because like I said, I didn't start playing old school until way after it had been around for 5 years. But looking back, it was like I was a veteran cape owner in RS2, or I guess when it turned into RS3. Like I had a 10-year cape, and what was my highest stat? It was like 80 attack. Like just fucking the lightest, most casual noob shit.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then fast forward, it's like, oh wow, I've maxed a UIM. Where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah, I was also going to ask, like, what you did you ever watch? You said you were watching content from the beginning,
Mhm.
basically. So, did you ever watch No Bank, the guy who like who like initially started the UIM game mode? I don't know if it was initially him, but I truly believe this was the guy that pioneered it. He had a YouTube
I
channel
do think it was No Bank, yeah, that was the pioneer.
because
I definitely
It was the Andrew Gower challenge.
yes. I definitely remember watching UIM Link. Obviously when Settle, like this is way pre Swampletics. Like
Mm-hmm.
Settle is a content creator, but not the monolith that his channel is now. Definitely watched his content, but I do think the person, like if I was to attribute it to a content creator that got me to click create account, I really think it was UIM Link, um, which is such a funny like effigy in the like UIM content creator sphere and broader. If you're hip to kind of the history of his account and how that ended. Um,
I am only a little bit familiar. I do remember watching him back in the day, but I just remember him stopping uploading. I don't remember. I don't have a like good memory of why he stopped playing.
Sure. So he was definitely in kind of the first wave of UIMs. You know, the gameplay loop back then. This is before potion decanting. This is, pre-looting bag. Like
Yep.
this is the Neanderthal era of UIM.
If it wasn't
Um,
storeable in your house, it didn't get stored.
right. And a lot of stuff wasn't even storeable at that point. So people were really just like raw dogging the game mode. Kind of there were no resources. There was nothing. Like it was truly you against, your creativity. Um and so yeah, he was a fun account to follow. Good content creator. He ended up gifting, quote unquote, his maxed UIM away uh, many years later after he had decided not to play anymore. Um, and one of his top donators in his Twitch chat procured, we'll say, the account after it was given up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is just a humor of the broader UIM kind of like cultural lore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so started the account way back when. Was still a huge noob. I mean, before my highest accomplishment was fucking 80 attack over the course of probably playing for 8 years. Like I was the Omega noob, and so maybe like a year and a half into playing the account, I met a player by the name of Tro. I'm not sure if you know Tro at all.
I do know Tro, watched his streams, love his YouTube videos. Wish he was still an active content creator for real.
Absolutely. So I will do a massive plug, and I'm sure we'll link it up and such. But
Definitely.
Tro, the UIM experience is still to date maybe one of my favorite kind of progress series of all of old school's content creation. Tro had such a good like vision artistically, aesthetically. He was a good storyteller, and he had such a good, strong mentality for the game from like a methodical perspective. Like he talks a lot about, you know, motivation and the flow state and why we play this game. And I think like that episode, he's talking about lava rune crafting in this one episode. I don't even think it's on his like UIM series, but just talking about, crafting lavas and motivation in life. And that is a resource and a conversation I think is still one of the greatest things to come out of our, community.
Absolutely. No, I loved his series. I get really nostalgic. As like as funny as it is to say, like this game is almost 10 years old. So at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I think many of us get nostalgic from the first time we made an account and really stuck with it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that watching that and then watching so many content creators come and go over the years,
Mm-hmm.
there are some I wish with my heart would come back forever.
Yes.
Do you watch Tedious at all?
Yes, so I'm a big fan of Tedious. He's a good friend. I think he is really, like a huge cultural pillar for the broader old school. And he just continues to crank out quality content. He
I
definitely is a name that sticks out when you're talking about, people that have come and gone across the years. Like
mhm.
Tedious has done a really nice job of having like really, keeping it fresh. Like he has really good staying power as a content creator personality.
I would say I think of him the most because he stopped uploading the Task series for almost a year,
Mm-hmm.
but kept streaming and kept in the back of his mind thinking maybe one day I'll do it again. And I remember the resurgence of the elite tier, and it was
Yeah.
like this huge video. Like people loved it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I watched all of his videos like day one. The other content creator, I don't know if you know him as well, Chocobo World. Chocobo?
Oh my God. I love Chocobo.
Dude,
That absolutely, I'm here with you on. I wish in my heart of hearts that he had infinite time and resources to create
same.
content. He is actually up there, swinging back to Tro. he filled that niche for me of just like the
Yes.
fun kind of like vaporwave aesthetic content creation, great storyteller, great personality after Tro left. Like Chocobo scratched that itch for me. And
Dude,
similarly,
yeah.
like unfortunately just doesn't create content as much anymore. And that
But
happens, right? Like we all have
yes.
lives, and I did the same thing. I was streaming like 8 hours a day every day for 2.5 years, and then nothing. Like I didn't stream for 2 years straight. So I get it.
I still remember the last stream. I believe the last stream you ever did was Inferno Attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like not seeing you go up again, and I was pretty sad because like for those like we never mentioned it, but I did meet you through watching your stream
Sure.
for a pretty consistent period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then ended up joining your little community of people and meeting some great people in there and all that kind of stuff. So like not only does old school have a great community vis-a-vis like the new clan system or the old friends chat system, but also like the broader community of content creators like previously was yourself. And even though you don't stream anymore, you still have that great community of people in like that you can talk to and all that kind of stuff. And not only those people, but the people you've also connected with in other facets of playing the game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Huge shout out to the lobby chord. Um, One of the biggest things, kind of like my goals when I was streaming, was I didn't even view myself like as a content creator per se. Like I wasn't trying to make a product as much as me streaming was a means to an end of like community building in a very genuine like I want a family of people that are all in support of one another's goals, and it is that water cooler, right? Like I want somewhere where people can ask questions and share their victories and their struggles in this joint experience. And I have just been incredibly blessed to meet individuals like yourself and everyone else throughout the years. And even like I said, I went ghost mode for over 2 years on Twitch, but in my Discord, that community is patroned daily by dozens and dozens of people, just keeping that community alive. And I think that those like familial bonds will outlast this game. This will be us as we grow old, connecting this global sphere. And that's the shit that I really love. That's what keeps me coming back again and again.
Absolutely. It's hard to step away from something that has so many people you care about inside of it. Whether
Absolutely.
it's a game, a job, I'm sure many people felt the same way like leaving high school or leaving college. It's like,
Sure.
you have all these people you see on a daily basis and suddenly they're not there anymore.
Hmm. I do want to circle back, just talking about like how I ended up going from uber casual player to hitting go live for the first time.
Mhm.
And that was Tro. So Tro, when he started his content creator journey, he was streaming on Twitch, and then he was making the UIM XP, the series that I was referencing. Um, but when he first started streaming, like the two of us had become friends from Ultimate CC, maybe 5 years ago at this. So we were maybe friends of like 2 or 3 months old at that point, and he invited me like into a Discord call one day while he was three tick fishing at the pond, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do a pond cast. Let's just the two of us riff live on Twitch." And I fell in love with. Like I had such a fucking good time, and I saw like the production means kind of behind the scenes being super accessible, and I was like, well, shit, that's like some of the most fun I've ever had playing this game. Let me just make a Twitch account.
Mhm.
And like 2 days later, went live for the first time. And you know, thousands of hours of streamed content later, Like, so incredibly thankful to Tro for just hanging out, playing the game, and inviting me along to be a part of it.
Dude, absolutely. And of course, Chocobo, Tro, Tedious, everybody's links will be in the chat. Of course, I will be shocked if you don't know who Tedious is and you're watching this. And of course, I will also link Buddha's stream in the chat in the description. If he ever decides he wants to click that go live button again. No pressure on it, but of
Oh
course,
no, not
there's
at all.
always
Well,
that chance.
oh yes. What's even funnier? So I've referenced being gone for over 2 years, and a lot of that is like it's not for lack of desire, and it's not for lack of I'm not logging into the game. Like I play consistently. You know, I log in at least once a week, even when I am the utmost busy in real.
Mm-hmm.
But real life is quite busy, and there are some obligations and other do in life. But most recently, I work 7 days a week. So there absolutely is the chance of me going live. And I actually did stream like 3 or 4 days in a row, like a month or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would love to do that when I have the time. Because nothing was crazier than hitting go live and 20 people show up out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, how have you been over the past 30 months? Like, that is the most insane conversation I've had of like, yo, it's been a minute. How are the wife and kids? Like, legitimately,
Yeah.
like, so much life had transpired. But there we were again at the water cooler, just sat around the pond, clicking on our favorite medieval, clicking simulator.
I think that's a really good segue into how you balance your real life obligations, your goals in game, and anything else you have going on in your life.
Absolutely.
What's your methodical approach, if you will, to that kind of thing?
Methodical approach. So, as we all
Or
know,
non-methodical?
well, no, I know what you're saying. As we all know, RuneScape can be a black hole of time. Like, they have crafted a game that is lovable, and the goals, like, you can set the goalposts as far back as you want into, like, infinity. Like, when I play this game, I am a big collection logger. So even before I maxed my account, like my account goal was, oh, I want to green log PVA content. And I know that will take, an inordinate amount of years. Like that goal is almost larger than I complete. Um, but I loved it for that because it's like there's always something to do, right? Like I can always log in and work towards, a quote unquote clear goal.
Mm-hmm.
As far as RuneScape, how that connects to real life obligation and time management and all that, a lot of this account's lifespan was when I was a university student. And probably the biggest periods of like concrete progress I made on the account was, funnily enough, during COVID. Like when COVID was new and everyone was sent home and quarantining really strictly, like I really sympathized with all of my in real life friends because all of their social structures were just destroyed overnight. Like, we can't go hang out at the pub. We can't go, hang out in a park or go play board games at the, game cafe or something.
Mm-hmm.
But for me and streaming and connecting over Discord with gamers all around the globe, all of a sudden there was this huge like surge of people because everyone was locked inside. What were you going to do? Well, you're going to max a UIM is what you do. And that's what I did. Like there was a period of probably 8-9 months where there was no day night cycle. I was the only person living in a 4-person apartment because my 3 roommates from university at the time, they had all gone home and then quarantine hit. So no one came back. So for 9 months, I lived by myself eating packet ramen. And I would play and stream for like 16 hours a day every months. So when we're talking about how we balance, life and gaming, that's not a good example, right? And that's actually what led into me um, taking a big break from the game and stopping streaming. Like when you're referencing, like, oh, Buddha was doing Inferno before they like last logged out. I very legitimately was, and I was making really progress on content, and it wasn't at all Inferno burned me out or took me away from the game, but it was I just finally, 9 months into that horrendous like life balance, I was like, I literally can't. I'm gonna have a break dance. If I continue to game, I desperately just need to do something else. So I stopped streaming at the time and probably took like a 4 or 5 month like cold turkey break from RuneScape. And then once, life opened back up some and things, came into a more healthy rhythm, I started to play again more casually, just off stream at the time.
I think that's a very interesting perspective on the whole COVID thing, because I think many of us did the same thing. I did the same thing. I think my burnout came shortly after the 3 to 4 month period, not from RuneScape, but from lack of social connection, lack of stability in my day to day like life. Like I don't talk about this very much, but during COVID, like my whole life was wake up, ride my one wheel, smoke weed, play RuneScape 15 hours a day, go to bed.
Yep. Yeah, man. And I mean, thank God at least like you're getting out on your one week. Imagine the bed a foot to your desk and then you sit there for 16 hours and then move a foot back to bed and repeat. Like it was not a good time.
And I
Like it
did
quite
I
literally
did
it quite literally was the best and worst of times.
I said, and I did live that for a while, but the reason I got on the one wheel was we were writing our album for my band.
Hmm.
So I had to spend time doing that. And not just I had
Sure.
to, I wanted to. I was really enjoying doing it. So that took about
Right.
2 months. So that was part of my day to day. It was part of my routine. I created a routine for myself. It was wake up at like 7 or 8, one wheel to the store, get a Red Bull, go to the park for an hour, write some of the record, come back, room craft for 13, 15 hours.
Yep.
Repeat.
Sure. Yeah, routine is such a huge thing, and this is, I can segue back into talking about RuneScape and kind of the grind ethic. I definitely pull like when we look at RuneScape, which is a lifetime game, like we are career players. I pull a lot on kind of the you know, the like theory behind it almost. A
Yeah.
lot from talking with Hey Gardy, one of my closest personal friends.
Shout out, hey,
He
Gardy.
Yeah, shout out, love that guy. He has got such a good mental surrounding the game, and he says this thing that I love and I will parrot, which is progress in this game, like a lot of other things in life, is just the aggregation of marginal gains. Like you log in for an hour every day, that's 30 hours a month. What are you going to do with those 30 hours? You log in 2 hours a day, that's 60 hours a month. Like if you set a goal that is achievable and you log in piecemeal and work towards it, like you will accomplish that goal,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be max, whether it be big XP total, whether it be, collection logging, et cetera, et cetera. Like you just log in and do it, bite-sized piece, knowing that, oh, I can log in and I can do, 5 raids a day.
So it's funny. It's funny you say that, because I was joking with somebody about my like what I do during these podcasts. Because somebody was telling me like, oh, I don't really watch RuneScape that much, but I watch your videos. And I was like, he's like, I watch you run around the circles. And I was like, yeah. When I do the podcast, I do agility because it's like the most probably because I understand that people probably like look back at the video sometimes while they're listening, and I want something like more interesting than me clicking a pink rock.
Sure.
So my joke is that after about 3,500 podcasts, I'll have 200 mil agility.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. But I mean, it's so true too, and I'll give a little behind the whenever I am doing something like this, I teleport to the Salve graveyard and I shoot ghouls. Because like how many podcasts do I need to star on before I get that champion scroll, right? Like we're rolling the dice, working on those goals,
I hope
aggregation of marginal gains style.
I hope you get it on this one. Yeah, I like that mindset, the aggregation of marginal gains. It's very true to the casual slash committed RuneScape player who doesn't who has obligations. Somebody
Sure.
who has to go to an 8-hour job. Somebody who
Hmm.
has a love life. Somebody who has a group of friends outside this game that they hang out with on a regular basis. You know, like me and my friends,
Absolutely.
we make salsa on the weekends sometimes. You know, we just made hot sauce the other weekend. Like I do think about this game when I'm not playing it, but I'm not at the point in my life anymore where I'm like, God, I wish I could be getting XP right now.
Absolutely.
There was a point where I was like that, and I'm very happy I'm not there anymore. But at the same time, like I really enjoy getting the XP when I'm playing.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's funny saying that, and I'm sure that most RuneScape players have gone through a similar kind of, this game is putty. It can fill any desire that you have for it. So like if you want to sit down and play 18 hours a day and be a neat, like you can do that. Or you can play the 30 minutes a day and never think about the game. Or, somewhere in between. Like I remember years ago, like making dinner with my girlfriend at the time, and I was doing a Bloodvelds task on an iPad, sat next to the cutting board as I'm, doing the mise en place of cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was a long period where, I'll kind of echo you of, oh, I could be gaining XP right now. Like I should be cutting redwoods in the back while I'm doing any school assignment because I'm losing XP if I'm not. And I think that's such a toxic mindset. And I am very glad that I've moved past that where, I'll go a week without playing the game and not think about it
Mm-hmm.
because I know like it's paused more or less. Like I have not lost any time working towards my goals because I haven't set my goals up where I need to be looking at real time versus played time versus, some of these big XP gamers like that is a facet of how they wish to play the game, and so they play accordingly. Like, oh, I run lavas when I'm at the computer and I cut redwoods when I'm in the shower because I want to obtain the 1 bill XP year.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that's the goal, that play style makes complete sense. But what I think is really unfortunate is people thinking that that is a requisite play style to play the game and still obtain goals.
Mm-hmm.
If anything else, that is my cautionary tale to the more quote unquote casual player of like, I have a maxed UIM. I have hundreds of millions of XP. I have, almost a filled collection log, and I maybe play 10 hours a week. Like you can obtain whatever you want in the game by setting an appropriate and achievable diet for the game.
Yes. I think that works really well with the mindset nowadays. I think when old school came out, there was this whole kind of nervous thing like, how long will these servers last? How long will I have? Well, it's been almost 10 years, right? And
Hmm.
we've seen peak players in like, they break the peak every so often. And I don't see it going down for at least 10 more years. If you want to weigh in on that a little bit, like do you do you foresee the downfall of the RuneScape server anytime soon? Because you look at games like RS3 still going, 20 years strong. World of Warcraft going, 20 years plus strong. Like you see game series like Final Fantasy going 30 plus years strong. Like there's no reason to say that this game will end in the next 5-10 years.
It's such an interesting thing to watch. And I think one of the more interesting like player experiences with this game in specific is like leaning into the curve of like content updates. And again, I'll shout out Guardians. Like he has over 1 billion XP on his maxed UIM, and he's done almost all the PVM content in the game. And I am continually impressed by how he sets aside like legitimately 5-year plan of, this content right now is in like a medium pace, something like runecraft or like construction on UIM is of like construction is slow and really fucking expensive, and I don't have any necessity to grind like 200 mil construction right. So I'm gonna backlog that for years, banking on the fact that there will be an update down the road that makes it faster or less expensive.
Just like Mahogany
And
Homes.
just like Mahogany Homes, just like Guardians of the Rift, Torva coming out or Tombs coming out with the Shadow, and then all of a sudden we look at the PVM ladder and it's like, oh well shit, I can go grab a Fang, I can go grab a Shadow, I can go get full Missouri, and that cuts 400 hours off of the XYZ PVM ladder group.
Mm-hmm. And with Tombs being so accessible, it makes it that much more likely that you can grind for those things earlier on before you say go to next.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, taking a Fang to next changes small teams considerably, whereas before, if you were at next day one and grinding, all of a sudden there's an item or skill or ability, etc., that shaves so much time off. It's this big, weird, nebulous, like timekeeping scale problem-solving puzzle that runs parallel to the gameplay loop landscape that makes it so fucking interesting. And I think UIM is just a higher sense of that because you are dealing with like the inventory management, space management, and oh, do I go and grind all of this out right now, or do I wait around a little bit? Another great example being prayer training on UIM has seen so many fucking changes last year with the inclusion of the Arceus spellbook rework, and the offering spells. Like that completely changed the entire game progression because now all of a sudden going and getting 95 runecraft wrath runes, quote unquote early game, like pre-Slayer, is super fucking viable because then when you go and get Slayer, you already have your 85 plus prayer completely passive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things like those where like, and it's even funnier, because now like I'm maxed, I have a diary cape, I have a full house, like I've done the raids, I have a lot of PVM items. So something like those prayer changes coming out after I've already maxed, it's like, oh, that's super fucking cool. And that changes like the meta and time, the game mode, and new people's journeys. But like, have I lost time because I achieved it before? That's kind of, you can argue it one way or the other.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that the I think looking back and thinking, oh, I wasted my time doing this skill, right? Like I have people know me and my clan as a rune crafting guy. I have 42 mil rune crafting experience. You're like, oh, did you waste time because the outfit came out? No,
Yeah,
I actually did not waste time because I enjoyed the time I spent getting the experience
right.
because it's like it's one of those things like this account in Origin was created to be a rune crafting trophy account. That was it. That was the whole idea of me making Mayfield, and it became so much more as time went on.
It fascinates me, this game, because it just is so malleable. It really is putty, like I said before. Because like I did 1400 corrupt gauntlet to get my first enhance, and then I wiped it like less than a week later. I got my second enhanced in like 100 KC after that, like on the rebuild. Did I waste those 1400 KC? Yes or no? And either answer is completely correct.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's another interesting perspective on it, and that's another. I think that's another decent segue into you being the first combat focused person. Well, not only combat focused because you're max, so obviously you've done skilling, you're aware of the skilling scene as well, and how skilling on a UIM can be so much different than skilling on like a normie or even a regular Iron Man.
Sure.
What have been your favorite PVM grinds? And what have been the ones that just like you don't want to log in anymore because you they need to get done, but you're just like, I don't like doing this content.
So thankfully, kind of the latter of that, I have not encountered many PVM grinds that have made me want to stay logged out. In such that I know that this game has an almost infinite skill ceiling. Like when you play this game at such a high level, both skilling or PVM, like when you really get nitty gritty into the ticks of the game, it's a dance. And any new method that you're for skilling or PVM is just new core. Like learning 4-0 melee hands for Ulm in chambers is like I wanted to bash my head against my keyboard. But once that clicked, and once you get that choreography down, it is just this beautiful dance. And solo chambers is maybe some of the content because of it. It is like it gives me elation doing that method because it's so fun and because there was such a payoff putting the time in to learn the method.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, there are some grinds that like aren't too stimulating, I don't think. Like the Warhammer is the classic example of, oh, lizardmen shamans. Like there's nothing interesting there. The skill ceiling is very low as far as, unless you want to sit there and one tick flick, that's kind of the height of the mechanical prowess of going for the 1 in 5k.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas any of the raids, it's like there's always new methods. The skill ceiling is so high that unless you are someone that has thousands and thousands of hours of PVM practice and knowledge, like there's always something to learn. And I'm sure that, there are some skilling methods kind of similar.
Absolutely. I think some of the best skilling methods I can think of are doing anything with artifact thieving, whether that's fire making, herb lore, or herb lore, depending I guess how to pronounce it, or crafting. I know a lot of Ironmen do crafting with artifacts because it is technically EHP at this point. Another thing a lot of people do would be Sepulcher. I would say is probably one of the, without using tick manipulation, is one of the highest skilling requirements.
Absolutely. And it's fucking fun for it too. And I think a lot of that fun comes from like it's challenging. Like it is a mechanical undertaking rather than, use knife on log and sit at a bank and do 14 by 14, for 100 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I love skilling content that really just feels like PVM. Like I think, Sepulcher is one of the cooler skilling updates that's ever come to old school.
I agree, and I think we need more updates like Sepulcher and less like Temperos, Guardians of the Rift, Wintertod.
Mm.
I think something that has a high skill ceiling, a decent barrier to entry, because the early levels of Sepulcher are not hard. It's once you get into floor 4 and 5 is when it really becomes like a, okay, how can I make this faster while also not
Being
messing up?
consistent. Yeah,
Being consistent,
absolutely.
yes. And another, like, I look at 3 tick 4G, or I look at, I think 1.5 tick teaks or 2 tick fishing is probably another really great example
Sure.
of high APM skilling methods that once you get them down, people joke and say like, "Oh, when I do 3 tick 4G, I watch movies." I'm like, I can barely do 3 tick sandstone and listen to trance music and stay on beat.
Right, right.
It's like I think it's like just the hours of practice.
Sure. It's a practice makes permanence kind of thing. Um, like I've referenced, my roots being big noob, and then it really was from a communal perspective. I was surrounded by people that really wanted to turn the game into a craft, be it, by planning and routing, or just doing like mechanically intensive methods like tick manipulation, or really pushing the envelope with PVM. So it's people like, Guardy and flashcards, Mars, and Sager, like a lot of these kind of big names in the community that I've been surrounded by, been so lucky to learn from, that I have done things in this game that if you had asked me, like when I first started this account, if I would ever accomplish, I would have just laughed. Oh, tick manipulation skilling, like I could never.
Mm-hmm.
And then, years later, here I am, being drafted into skilling comps specifically to go sit down and sesh out like a 30-hour of two tick fishing. Like it's such a fun game in that if you and put the practice in, you can accomplish any of the mechanical
Sorry, you cut out
onagaris.
there quickly when you were talking about 2 tick fishing.
Oh, I was saying, this game is so accessible if you put in the practice, because it's just a tick by tick game. Like there's only so much you can do in a 0.6 second window. And so the game is in such small pieces that it's just a practice thing. Like any tick manipulation skill, any like super tight PVM, um, like route or mechanics, like anyone can learn to do anything in this game if they have the motivation to.
Absolutely, and that's a great thing to tell like new people. Like I'm sure there are those guys you see killing blood velds in full granite with a dragon mace. People joke about the quintessential noob outfit, but like that guy in 6 months could become somebody who is doing tick manipulation. He's doing, these crazy raid strats. He's learning Tombs of Amasket with his friends. And suddenly his eyes are open.
Absolutely.
And,
I feel that so strongly because that was my transformation.
yeah, exactly. Like you are the quintessential
Yeah.
person when it comes to noob to what can I become.
Yes. And from, going back to like the streaming and content creation, I think that was a lot of my brand and what like brought a community together, because I was the relatable cute noob, but that was so hungry to learn, that I
Mm-hmm.
think, I was both relatable and a good resource by proxy of like, oh shit, Buddha can do solo cocks. I can do solo cocks.
And it's so interesting to think about that. Like I come from a time in RuneScape where my noob period really ended around 2011. Around then is when I started like really reaching goals in RS2 and then eventually RS3. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually didn't quit RS3 until about 2014, 2015. I
Cool.
played through EOC for a while,
Sure.
but I've been a skiller since like 2010.
Hmm.
So for me, the evolution of combat didn't affect me too much. And in fact, like them adding the action bar let us drop fish easier, do some skilling methods easier. So like in a sense, it actually made my life a little easier in some aspects.
Sure.
So it's very interesting to hear the fact that, like, I know many people have that mindset of, oh, EOC started, many people quit the game. Like I watched the player base drop instantaneously almost. And then of course the So Wrecked petition in mid 2012, early 2013, that got us to the game where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you would ever have given RS3 another chance? Had it been 2017, you're looking for something to do, and Old School never came out.
Who knows, right? Like, I'm sure that I logged in a handful of times and played a day or two. But the other thing is, like, I don't think that that timeline Buddha would have ever occurred because I wasn't connected with any of the game. So it was, me playing by myself, and then the game became unrecognizable, and I didn't enjoy the gameplay anymore, or just even how it looked.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was nothing keeping me there. Whereas in Old School now, like I've said, with the community that I have, like it doesn't matter if I wiped everything, if I lost access to this account, like I would still be around because the people are here, and that will keep me forever.
Absolutely. One thing I actually really want to ask you, being somebody that came in around 2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
What were some updates that came through while you were gone that you were really shocked to see when you logged in the first time? I don't remember 2018 updates extremely visually, like with extreme, like, what's what I'm looking for? Just extreme clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember the game changing extremely, like extremely. I don't know another word besides extremely.
Sure.
Like the game has changed so much in 2013 and 2018. So like, what were some of the big things that you were like really shocked to see when you first came back? Even knowing you kept up with the game periodically vis-a-vis content creation. What,
Oh, so I've pulled up the update table on the wiki just to give some context. I'm looking back in like what was 2018, and just the top item that I see from December of 2018 is the collection log. And
oh,
and wow, we do I think that takes, if we look at the history of the game, the addition of that has just completely altered how this game is played and how it's updated as a result.
absolutely. I love watching collection log content creation. I love watching people strive for that 1,000+ log, because even if you want to do 1,000, that's still so many hours, no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely.
It's like the collection log is like the infinite source of gameplay. It's like our Pandora's box.
Absolutely, it is. And it's funny, I've actually, in kind of the recent months, seen a lot of backlash for the collection log's existence because it alters how players play. Um, so for things like rev weapons being made more common, like if the argument is, oh, it's going to up the GP average per kill of rev, like that's such a slight GP increase. Why are people really wanting to be more common? So we can
With
see that sweet, sweet green log is what it
yeah.
is,
I was
and
like,
especially on Iron Man, right?
yeah, exactly. And revs are already so worth it for money.
Right.
So it's hard. Like, I think I voted for 30% more common in the weapons. Did you do the vote at all?
I don't think I participated in that one. I've kind of written, so as a collection logger, I've kind of written off as just like you've said, it's Pandora's box. Like for me to complete all of the potential collection log slots, first of all, they add content faster than we can complete it. You know, next comes out, and to green log that, I'm going to pull a number out of my ass, 700 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the time that I complete that, Tombs of a Masket comes out. In the time that it takes me to do the 2,000 Tombs of a Masket to get the final cape and green log that, fuck it, we might even have Raid 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when it comes down to something like Revs or any of the other savory, in my opinion, you know, collection log pages, like I can just happily never do Revs because I will never reach a point of content loss where I need to do that to be progressing to my goal of getting more slots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing for like, fuck Castle Wars. I don't have a single goddamn Castle Wars slot because I'm not gonna sit in AFK for 300 hours. Like, miss me with that. I will have less total log slots than sit and do something that I don't find fun.
See, and I think Castle Wars is good for people who like the people that we talked about earlier, people who have that grind set of like, I need to be doing something at all times, especially
Absolutely.
with the RuneLight plugin letting us AFK for 25 minutes. That makes Castle
Yes.
Wars like you could literally go take a shower, as you said, and go
Yes.
do a full Castle Wars game.
That's such a good example. Yes, tying everything together of like, if my goal is collection log slots, doing something like Castle Wars, you know, while I'm at work or while I'm out at a pub or whatever, because you're just stood there for 20 minutes, right? Like that would be a good quote unquote. And so it is me and my goals acknowledging like I could do this. I am not interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that is like willfully performing under what is possible. Um, and that's just back to the whole life diet of, you know, playing RuneScape and achieving goals that you've set out for.
Yes, and that's I have two follow-up questions based on collection logs for you now.
Mhm.
With the Tombs of Masket and Theater of Blood, their capes for 2000 are based on total completions, whereas Chambers is 2000
CMs.
CMs. Do
Hmm.
you think they'll ever change that because people will have an uproar about it?
Do I think that that will be pulled in the future? Almost guaranteed. And this shoehorns back into what people have said, like the ones that gripe at the existence of the collection log.
Mhm.
Like the question that you're asking is the poster child for it, where it's like, you know, are we going to make this collection log slot more accessible because people want it?
Or even Jar
Like,
Darkness.
yeah, a jar of darkness rate, you know, like does the jar actually do anything outside of, like, yes, you can put it in your house as a cosmetic, but it's really about the green log.
Mhm.
Like, if we did not have the collection log, would the absurd nature and rarity of the Jar of the Darkness be relevant whatsoever? The people that are anti-collection log would say no, because the rate of it means nothing because there's not more or less a to-do list that has it as a component. Um, But we do have the collection log, and we do have these capes. It will probably be pulled. It would probably even pass being combined KC to be in line with Tombs and Tob. Um, I don't know how I feel on it particularly. But then again, I've also resigned myself to, oh yeah, I'll do 2K CMs because, you know, that's what I gotta do, and I want the shiny green text.
And CMs are fun.
Yeah, and CMs are fun, right? And
I
like better rates, et cetera, et cetera.
I think the hard part about Chambers for me is like I've done all 3 raids at least once or twice each. In my like notations of being mostly a skiller but doing mild PVM here and there on my main or with my friends on their accounts, I have a mild mental note that Chambers has always felt like the most enjoyable because it's so unique compared to other raids. Like Tob, you kill the 5 monsters and then Berserk, right? Or is it 4
Mhm.
monsters?
Yeah.
Tombs, you kill the 4 monsters, you do the puzzle rooms, you kill the guardian. Chambers is like, it's a random pattern of different skill rooms and boss rooms, and like, while some people that's frustrating because you have to scout rooms, whereas to other people they don't care what rooms they get, like, oh, this one's different than last one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we've seen the discourse on people like asking for, they talked about adding like scout scrolls so that, there was a consumable where you could get the layout that you wanted. Uh, or turning it into just a linear progression where you always get exactly what you want. But then again, that's exactly what a CM raid is. Like a CM is the exact same layout, the same like position of the rooms. Whereas even if you had like the same layout as far as rooms and bosses in a chambers, like the orientation of the room can swap just in regular Cox. So like the methodology is a little bit different because maybe I drag Tecton to like a different set of tiles, whereas in CMs it's always exactly the same, so it's very procedural.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. It is unique, like you're saying, and I'll be interested to see kind of what the dev teams idea for what a raid in this game looks like moving forward. Are we going to see a regression to kind of the randomized rooms and layouts, which is very roguelike, by the way? Or is it going to be like Tombs and Tob, where, or a CM Cox, you know exactly what you're getting. You go in and do the same procedure the 2,000 times and get the purple items.
And I think that's a great. I think Chambers or Cox is a great example of like, you do regular, it's easier, but it's randomized. But CMs, it's much harder, but you know what you're getting into. And I think that's such a great gameplay like transition, because like,
Hmm.
once you get to the point where you're good at most rooms in Chambers, and you're like, oh, I feel like I could do this if it's harder, then you transition to it and you kind of know what's going to happen as time goes on. You know what to bring in all the time. It's not like, do I have to bring a pickaxe in, do I have to bring this and that in? You just know going in, but the
Hmm.
skill ceiling is much higher than the original rate itself.
Yeah. And a lot of it is regardless of what the devs throw at us. Old school RuneScape is one of the most documented and crowdsourced games from an informational standpoint in the industry of games. Like we have made this RPG into a spreadsheet adventure game.
Hmm.
And some people love it and some people hate that fact. And so something like the invocation systems from Tombs is like that's such an awesome system, and it provides so much variability and like, player choice as far as your gameplay loop. But even in the face of that, we have still defined the meta. Like
Hmm.
we know theoretically what the fastest purples per hour is, and the invocations that you want to run and the ones that you don't want to run, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I quite like that this game is an information game. It's a very unique playing experience where you are a better player based on what you know, even outside of being able to click where you need to click and when you need to click. Just knowing that like there are certain, pathing mechanics or tick mechanics in this game makes you a better player. And then comes the fun part of putting it into practice and making it consistent.
Hmm. And I think that like really shines through in some of the methods that we have for like bosses that have been out for 7 years. Like people who figured out the Red X God Wars methods, or the 6 to 0 Bandos Zammy methods, or I can't even imagine what was going through the guy's head the first time somebody tried chinning Armado.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It,
The player ingenuity in this community is in of itself like another seat at the game dev table, which makes it so interesting.
mhm.
It,
It's a very unique perspective on games. You know, I've had people ask me like, "Oh, you've already put so much time into that game. Why do you want to keep playing it?" I'm like, I come back to it because I can do whatever I want, and it will virtually never end. I
sure.
can go play the new God of War and maybe spend 100 hours into it, getting all the achievements, doing everything I want to do in it. But at the end of the day, then I'm done. And I am a type of person who doesn't like to replay games that much. I don't find the same enjoyment that I did the first time playing through.
Sure.
That's my personal opinion. Obviously, there are many people who think differently. Um, but with RuneScape, I don't have that. Like, sure, I do the same thing all the time, but like, there's always something coming from the monotonous task. Like the example I give is doing agility. Every single time I record one of these, like eventually I'll hit 20 mil and then 30 mil and then 40 mil and it
Hmm.
won't stop until it's done. And then when I'm done with agility, I'll move on.
Right. And here's the fun bit. By the time that you hit the 4.6, there's probably a new skill.
Oh, absolutely. I with the new polling system being 70%, I don't see a reason that a new skill won't pass. Because didn't warding miss by like 3%
Let
or
me
whatever?
check the wiki and see.
I
Failed
say
polls.
because I think of any if I had to bring a skill to RuneScape, I would easily, without a doubt, choose invention. I think invention would be the most sensible choice for old school. Um, Due to the fact that right now we have a huge problem with having too many items in the game, with bots, all that kind of stuff. Whereas invention would help us sync a lot of those items that are otherwise unused. And it's just such a unique way to get rid of stuff while also using them for something good.
Hmm.
Even summoning, I think, wouldn't be too bad. But I think there's already too many pets in the game, so I don't know how that'd work.
I always loved just the thought around like sailing because bringing a dungeoneering style activity to old school, like I think that would field really well. Like
Hmm.
dungeoneering was so popular in RS2, just like Slayer has always been popular, right?
Hmm.
Just those classic RPG elements I think track really well.
I would be very intrigued to see a full sailing breakdown. Like what would it look like as a skill itself? Just like kind of how if you're aware of who Caveman Only is,
Yeah, I know, Kid Man.
did you see his like post on the Bard skill?
Yeah, I read all the way through that. There were some good ideas. I wasn't quite taken with it personally, um, but whatever new flavor of skill is, like there definitely is a hunger.
Yes.
Um, I will kind of recuse myself from saying whether or not the game should have a new skill or needs a new skill, or even if I really want one, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really like it all just circles back into it's new content, and if I like it or if it gives me something that I like, it will become a goal, and I will just like everything else in this game.
Hmm.
Like, is the next fight fun? No. But do I want Torva? Yes. So will I go and spend 7 next? Yes. Because I am motivated to obtain the goal and achieve the items, right?
Yeah. So whether or not you like truly enjoy the content, the end product is worth the time spent.
Absolutely. And that's the whole conversation of maxing for people, oh, it sucks. Runecrafting sucks. I cannot be forced to train this skill. Well, first of all, agility and runecrafting have been better and faster. But secondly, that just means you don't want the red cape. Like
Hmm.
I don't think that there is anything in this game that boils down to anything greater than your motivation and willingness to show up and do the thing. and it circles all the way back to us talking about aggregation of marginal gains.
Shout out, hey Gardy.
Shout out Gardy. Yeah. And what's so funny is like maxing this account, I had I'm about to hit 400 days play on this account. Like that's nearing the 10K hour. And I'm sure you've heard the old ad, you know, it takes 10,000 hours to become a master. Well, shit, am I a master of this game? Abso-fuck not. Like, I still have so much to learn and so much to achieve. And thankfully, as I played more and got to a higher total level, and I was surrounding myself by people that really like take a big bite out of this game and play it kind of lifestyle like with the like long term planning. By the time I was deciding just to bite the bullet and max, my mental had improved to where there weren't really any unsavory skills trained because I was so motivated to that. Were there skills that I enjoyed training more than others? Absolutely. Like I loved doing sepulcher and rooftops. Doing rooftops because I had a fuck ton of stamps to make.
And I
Whereas,
love rooftops.
oh yeah, the rooftop coma is just mwah, chef's kiss. Throwing some trance music, we're chilling.
Exactly. It's one of those like it's one of those things I never thought I'd enjoy. I think once you hit 90, it just becomes so lax. And like everybody jokes like, "Oh, once you hit 90, like that takes forever." I'm like, "Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but like once you get there."
Yeah. It's just, you put in the effort to see what you want. If you don't want to put in the effort, I guess you just don't want what you were, pining after all that bad.
Mhm. And that's a interesting way to move into my other question I had for you, and that was completion escape. What is your opinion on completion escape, and what kind of requirements do you think they would make old school have for it?
Oh God. So this this is something I've seen a couple of times and looked into it all that much. So this is going to be some pretty fresh off the cuff response.
That's totally
Um,
great. Noting that like many people have thought about it for a long time, so it's good
mhm.
to know that there are people who have not like even given it a second thought most of the time.
Every time that I've seen, kind of like I'm not on Reddit, but see the Twitter post of a Reddit post,
Hmm.
it's like, oh sure, comp cape, fucking send it, because it would go onto the pile of content just like anything. Comp cape, if it was just super unsavory, it would just be another like Rev's green lock to me, right? Like I will eventually obtain that I am desiring to do, right? Um, as far as the requirements, that's a really hard answer because, and I'm not 100% on the timeline of this, but if I was to give a guess, when Comp Cape was added to RS2/3, there was no collection log.
Correct. The collection log is like, I think the collection log is even pretty new to RS3.
Okay, that's what I thought. So the completion cape was just the next step up of like a quest or achievement diary cape of like, here are the one-time unlocks, or, I know Castle Wars, big comp cape of
Ca-
needing
I
a
say
certain amount of wins or something.
Castle Wars, you actually required a certain amount of wins for the trimmed, not the regular one,
Oh,
I
okay.
believe.
Gotcha. I
Yeah, I
used
think it was
to,
like a few thousand wins for the trimmed.
God.
There was a guy in RS3. His name was Castle Wars. He used to make
Yes.
videos, and he had a
Yeah, I
trimmed
remember
comp.
watching him.
Yeah,
And his content was great.
it was great. Yes, I agree,
Just gonna go get my 5K Castle Wars win.
dude. God,
The dopamine, right?
I can't even imagine.
Um, so funny. But yeah, so the over under, yes, I would vote yes to a comp cape in old school, I am assuming slash hoping that it would not be tied to the collection log. I think that would be the killing blow to it getting added to the game.
Hmm.
If you needed like green logged pages for the collection log to get a comp cape, I think that would be really disenfranchising for people. But if
I
it was
say,
just
sorry, go ahead.
like, achievement cape part 2, plus some mini games, I think people would actually vote it in.
I think one suggestion people have made is like have a certain amount of collection log slots plus some extra content, like all the mini quests and like some other extra content. Like I don't know, like unlocking upper level and bigger sack up mode load mine.
Sure, it would be stuff like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think that like something reasonable, like 500 slots at like for like the minimum of the comp cape, because like many people could do 500 slots with just skilling stuff or simple mini game things. Giants Foundry, Guardians of the Rift, Winter Todd, Clue Scrolls, because so many people love Clue Scrolls.
sure. Yeah, I
Um,
don't think 500's too unobtainable. I'm set at 850 right
mhm.
as a pretty like avid clogger. So 500 would not be too terrible.
And I think if they were ever to do it trimmed, it would probably have to be like 1200 plus
Sure. And
because
there'll be more added. But,
yes.
realistically, the biggest thing about adding the comp cape, like the biggest determining factor is it a cosmetic max cape or is it a new best in slot utility cape?
And I think the idea is that it would not become the new Max Cape. I think the Max Cape when it came out, I don't know if people expected it to have as much power as it does.
Sure. And it became a best in slot of sorts. Like if you're skilling, you should be wearing a max cape. If you're doing PVM, obviously there gear items to wear. Um,
And then variants of the Max Cape to add to your gear items just to flex that you have a Max
right.
Cape.
Like the flex cosmetic is like a good thing. Um, but yeah, having all of the skill cape perks combined into one item is very strong. And so it makes maxing not just like a personal intrinsic goal, it makes it I am obtaining a best in slot item.
Which
And that can be disenfranchised.
yes.
Like, oh, I need to max. I don't have
S-
choosing not to have a best in slot.
So you cut out there again when you said I do not need a max.
Some people like they feel pressured to max because if they don't max, then it's in this weird area of like, oh, I because I'm not investing these hours and efforts, like I am choosing willfully not to have a best in slot, be it the max cape.
Mhm.
And people have griped and said similar things about the infernal, like, oh, the infernal's hard, best in slot shouldn't be kept behind, difficult challenges and the max cape's so strong, but it shouldn't be held behind, like, hundreds of hours of gameplay.
Mhm.
To that, my response is, well, you're playing a fucking game that's all about obtaining items. So why are you complaining about taking effort to obtain items?
Mhm. And I think that like while the Max Cape is inherently a very strong item, it doesn't discount the effort you have to go through to get it.
Sure.
Because like of course like con cape, crafting cape, having those like on one cape is already crazy. But being able to have like the Warriors Guild telly, being able to have all the perks from all the capes, assuming one day I'm sure it'll be pulled that they're going to add the Woodcutting Guild and the Mining Guild tellies to those relative capes itself too.
Mhm.
I know people have been vying for those teleports to be on those capes for a long time because
Sure.
of the crafting cape teleport.
Yeah.
And I get
And
it.
fishing guild as well. Like
Yeah.
there's the thought behind it. What's funny about that is I know that adding something like a wood cutting guild telly to a wood cutting cape even though that would end up being bundled into the max cape, is way better for someone restricted build like you have
Oh yeah.
than an actual like maxed account. Like I don't give a shit if I have a woodcutting cape telly on my cape because I have one on my jewelry box and I my house.
Hmm.
But if that's not the case for a unique build or a skiller or something like that,
I don't think people
is
understand how crazy the Ring of the Elements is for my account.
mm,
Earth Altar Telly, right next to a sawmill. Air Altar, the fastest way for me to get to Falador by a landslide. Like
and it's elemental runes and law runes to charge it.
yeah, that's it.
So that's cheap. Yeah, that's cheap as hell.
Plus, like as somebody who doesn't spend their money on much, buying 10K law runes is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, not gonna break the bank. I'll see you at the blood altar.
Yeah, exactly. And then like water rune, the water altar is like probably the most useless one. But even the fire altar is like the fastest way to get to the desert because I can't make rings of dueling. So if I need to go collect my potato cactus for a farm run, easiest tell you there. Getting Temperos, easiest tell you there. Getting the Giant's Foundry, if my minigame telly isn't ready, easiest way there. It's easily one of the best rings to come out for my account build and like many other limited account builds. And even for, I believe for like easy clue scrolls, it's also one of the best slot rings to have because it's so quick to get to some of the spots.
Mhm.
It was an unbelievable item, and I was super stoked to see it on the Guardians of the Rift. Now, in saying that, I am not really a huge fan of Guardians of the Rift.
Mm.
As
What are your gripes with the content?
I I liked rune crafting because it broke the cycle of, for me at least, being a UIM, doing blood runes. It broke the cycle of having to run back to the bank every time I wanted to do it. Like smithing, got to run back to the bank, unnote my ores. Wood cutting is just super AFK. Mining, depending what you're doing, you can just drop everything. But I don't know. There's something about rune crafting because even when were you around when RuneSpan came out?
Yes.
So when RuneSpan came out, I made a new account and I got 99 rune crafting in like 3 weeks.
Sheesh.
I like that was the moment I fell in love with the skill itself, not for the content it does, but the prestige the skill brings.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because for a long time, runecrafting was known as a skill like, oh, why would you do that skill? It's the worst one. Even you said it yourself, like people don't max because of agility and runecrafting.
Sure.
Um, so for me, runecrafting being one of the quote unquote prestigious skills left in the game, even with runecrafting bloods, noting that bloods are still only 33 to 36K an hour, depending on what you're getting. Knowing that you still spent 250, 300 hours doing the skill to get 99.
Hmm.
So that's why it's my favorite, not because the content is good. So therefore, Guardians of the Rift to me is not enjoyable
Because it hurts the prestige by making it accessible.
as well as not just the prestige, I don't think, but just like it eliminates the gameplay loop of rune crafting. It's something
Mm.
totally different, like how Wintertot is totally different from normal fire making. I would even say that Temperos is pretty close to normal fishing.
Yeah.
But like Guardians of the Rift and like Guardians of the Rift is the most akin to free to play rune crafting because you're walking to the essence mine, getting your essence, walking to the altar, crafting it, going back to the essence mine, and repeating. Is that something you think you might agree with?
I guess I hadn't thought of that, but framing it like that does make sense.
That's just my opinion, and I know like people will probably be like hate on me for it because I want the prestige. Because of course, like I did library back in the day, um, for rune crafting on the UIM, which is like kind of how we did it back then. If you weren't somebody who could like get all the S from Zulra or raids or whatever,
Hmm.
and I remember people asking me how I got to 77 and noting that I did the RCS library the whole way. They were like, "Wow, why would you do that?"
That's funny.
And it wasn't like in reality, it was pretty bad because I got like 52, and then I stopped playing this account for like 6 months, and then I came back and finished. So it is what you make of it, you know.
Mhm. One of the funny things about just this game in general is the overwhelming majority of player population are Astro casuals.
Hmm.
And then there is this very small minority of spreadsheet. Um, and so it's so hard to appease both groups because wildly desires and
Oh,
um
absolutely. And have you seen that post about like what the average player's total level is?
oh god, is it like sub 1200?
It's like 10,050 or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's and like that's like the
It's
average player.
it's so crazy to me.
I saw somebody getting flamed on Twitter for only having 1,800 total. They were like, "You're not even a real player," and I was like, "What?"
That's easily like 400 hours more than average. That's so funny.
It's crazy to think like that the disconnect is that great because like I thought for sure an average player these days would be like 1,500 total minimum,
Yeah, sure.
and that's wild to me to think that it's still. I guess with all the unique builds people do, like that probably lowers it a little bit. Like probably not by much because there's not many very niche accounts out there. Probably like a few thousand at most people who like aren't just mains or like high level pures. Because even like high level pures still have like 1,500 to 2K total,
Mhm.
so they can PK in the high level high total worlds.
Sure.
Because on my other account, I'm in a clan called Iron Pure, and there are guys with crazy like they have like 2,050 total on like a one defense or
That's nuts.
like a 42 defense pure. It's like as an Iron Man, like you know yourself, like you kind of have to have like base 80s to like get some of the best in slot stuff. Even some skills like crafting, you need like 94 with a plus or 93 with +5 boost just to get the best in slot amulet.
Yeah.
So it's like some of the items are still locked behind pretty high skill requirements.
It's also worth referencing just that that average player is also not an Iron Man.
Yes.
So there's a further layer of rotation, you know, as this game moves forward of, untradables versus tradables versus value of items. Like there's so much discourse that I've seen over the purple rates at tombs with the rationale being prices are, and that actually does not like
Yeah, cuz
what the fuck do you mean that we care about costs? Like we should be talking about the time and balancing it on that versus like your rationale is GP per hour for a main doing, 5 main.
mhm.
Fuck are you talking about?
And that's the hard part too is I think people expected it to be so long because green logging chambers and Tob both were like especially when chambers came out because when chambers came out it had like four more items on it
Mhm.
because
And
it
the
had
player base was not as smart as it is now. Like I'll go back just the release of Chambers versus release of Tombs are not at all like comparable because the player base is so much smarter, so much better equipped just looking into the mechanics of the game now
mhm.
on average and even more so at the highest pinnacle level than 4 years ago when Tob was released.
And I think it was crazy when I found out that Tombs has been completed more than Tob at this point.
Hmm.
That is a like I watched do you know who Tasty Life is or Tasty?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched his video on like the skill ceiling and skill floor and all that kind of stuff, and I find it very interesting to think about the fact that like they saw Tob and they were like, well, this content isn't really utilized as much as we thought it would be because it's so difficult to learn and because it
And it's
requires the
punishing.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Requires a team, it's punishing. It's not kind of like if you wipe, you're spending money, you're spending time. Where, Tombs is like so accessible by comparison because you don't need a team. And even if the individual mechanics are hard, like you can just give yourself infinite and
Mm-hmm.
just continue to grind away. So for, one time entering, you could get 100 lives worth of knowledge if you desired. Whereas Tob is like, yeah, good luck finding a team where they're all comfortably going to wipe 50 times because it's a day one and no one knows anything.
Plus, you still have to get to Verzik. Whereas in
Right.
Tombs, you could do each room in any order you want. So if you want to
Absolutely.
spend an hour learning one room at a time, you could
Yeah.
easily go in and do that.
Sure. Like, with the melee Zarpus walk, it's like, okay, if I want to practice that, even with entry mode, I still have to do the entire fuck to
Y-
get to the second to last room to
Yep.
then try a new technique and hope I don't wipe. Versus, like today I spent an hour and a half learning Red X Baba. And the only thing that it cost me was 3 minutes of my time to get past the monkey puzzle room. And then
Hmm.
I can just sit there and practice Baba all day long.
And I think that kind of accessibility is fantastic.
Absolutely. What's so funny is with Tombs coming out and Invocations, like, the word accessibility was being thrown around so much. No one in this fucking community knows what that actually means. Like, accessibility and ease are not synonyms.
Hmm.
Like, accessibility is what Tombs is. It is also difficult content, but it is highly accessible content to where you can learn very quickly,
Hmm.
which makes it then easy.
Yes. I would say in comparison to if okay, I want your opinion first. If you had to rate the three rates we have from hardest to easiest, how would you rate them currently? In the
I
current
think
state.
solo chambers is some of the most fun content in the game. I think that Tombs, which I've been running almost exclusively solo, is decently fun. I probably have another 300 hours of enjoyment from it because it's so modular. Like, as soon as I get, you know, like 350 kind of money raids, super fast, super consistent, well then I can bump it up to a 500, and that's a whole new experience, right? That I can practice and obtain, and then, well, oh, 500s are so consistent that now I'll just run 500s. So like there's so many different, you know, iterations with Tombs because of the invocations that I think it has a much longer lifespan from a learning perspective
And for
per
the
player.
I'll say for the average player as well, probably too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Because, they can do a level 50 and get through their first raid and they're like, "Wow, that's cool. Okay, let's do a 100. Okay, let's do a 150. Okay, now we're running a normal. Oh, that 150 wasn't too bad. Let me do a 165, 200, 220." You know, it has multiple states of play that really encourages learning and growth. Um, which, like we've been saying, is quite opposite of Tob, which is just punishment from start to finish.
Mhm.
I think Tob, a lot of it is content that a certain group of PVMers, like, it is the best content in the game. I have not fallen in love with it all that much, but part of that is I've only done 100 KC. I haven't even put in the time to get comfortable with doing it as a, like, bass player, let alone running all the fun unique strats.
Mhm.
So when I get back to it, I will probably enjoy it more.
And
Fingers crossed.
do you envision yourself going to Tob when you're finished with Tombs, or you have other things like Full Torva you want to finish before you do Tob?
So it's the gear ladder is always changing. And it's also changing not only because of, like, things that are officially added into the game, but player ingenuity. Like we were referencing 6.0 God Wars. Shout out, Geckham and all those big brains. Like that makes it so you can go get a Bofa and then you have solved all of God Wars. Like you can go and get any God Wars.
Mm-hmm.
With Tombs coming out and the Shadow, like with Shadow and either Blowpipe, Full Missouri, or Crystal and Bofa, it's like where are you even using the Scythe in game in late 2022? You're really not. Like you Arclight Cerberus, you mage or do a Bofa kiting, pretty much everything else in the game. So all of a sudden that mega rare from Tob is like, what am I going to use it for? What am I going to use a Sang for? What am I going to use a blade for? We have the Fang, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So no one uses Justy for anything. So really, the only thing on Tob on my to-do list is go reclaim my Avernic. And then that's kind of it. Like I can push Tob completion from a collection log standpoint off until I've gone and collected all of the other, frivolous best in slots like Torva.
Mm-hmm. And one thing about I guess the only boss I can think of that like Scythe is good at until you get the mace is Fasani's.
And then we look at that, and that's a funny one. I talked to Guardia about this, because he's gone and finished Fasani's, and it took him a long time to get his mace.
That's
Was
a bad example of a well balanced boss.
sure. Well, the scythe from a funds perspective has also changed because for a long time, before Guardians of the Rift came out and before the True Blood Altar, like
And Blood
scythe,
Essence.
yeah, and Blood Essence, Scythe was inordinately expensive, and you would end up losing time played by using a Scythe at Fasani's because the time saved using the Scythe over a bludgeon pre-mace, you did not break even with having to make blood runes at Zaya or making GP to buy blood runes to use in your Scythe.
Wow, really?
Yes,
That's
which is
crazy.
like that's nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, when you're looking at playing the game at a 8-year long perspective, it's like why the fuck would you ever use a scythe
I guess
except for the very niche like going for the grotesque guardian speed run time, which you just have to get once and then you
mm-hmm.
can retire it again.
I say, and otherwise, I think Seth is decent for more top completions, right?
Right. So like Tob is a great place to use the scythe. The scythe goes very hard. If I had a scythe, I would use it at Tob, absolutely. Um, but yeah, Fasani's man, that shit's just so fucked. And then even more so, like just another nail was put in that coffin of Torva coming in. And if you look at just strength bonus of items, like the places to use Inquisitors are few and far between in the post Nex gear ladder.
Mm-hmm. Because what do we got left? KQ.
Yeah, KQ is a place to use it. I think people still use it for like CM speeds. Um, I all of this blathering goes on just to say, with how combat works in this game, is from a time perspective, you will never even beyond mid-tier gear.
Mm-hmm.
Like the time it takes to get a dragon scimitar and a set of black dragon hide with an all of the gear upgrades past that, you will never break even on time if you play this game like a spreadsheet. And one of my absolute favorite players that plays like this is a guy Iron on PC. And he
Yep.
plays this game exactly like that, where he just plays in budget gear because that is what is most efficient. If you play with that mentality, there's no reason to go get other than it's a fun shiny.
That's
But then you arrive at this weird place of like, oh, I have, black D high. I have what is effectively best in slots. What game is there left to play?
mm-hmm.
So then you go raid and you get the shiny.
Yeah, that's fair.
et cetera, right? So it becomes a question of like, what are my desires to play outside of what is just like mathematically feasible?
And then it becomes what do you personally do for enjoyment? Like you are
Sure.
a clogger.
Hmm.
I am an XP person.
Hmm.
I like to watch number go up and rank go up. That's what keeps me invited. That's what keeps me going, and also to truly finally like do the level 3 max on my account.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we've had quite the conversation.
It's been so fun.
It's been a very enjoyable experience. It's really cool to talk to you with um things that I don't really have friends who I talk with this kind of stuff about. Because like
Absolutely.
as somebody who myself already doesn't really do PVM that much, um, knowing that I can like have this conversation with somebody else who like really knows what they're talking about and can kind of fill in the gaps I have from just watching content.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
So
it is a wacky game that we play. And the PVM like gear progression just changes update by update. How I would start playing UIM 3 versus when I started, in 18 are so radically different, not only from like what is available in game, attitude and willingness to grind. Like I think I could max in a third of the time it took
you're
as a
gonna
combo of those two things.
you're gonna follow the JCW route and do a Road to Max Cape speed run, but UIM version.
God, please no. I don't have another 5,000 hours to pull out of my ass. And really what it is if I
Sorry, you cut out again. You cut out when you said what it really is.
oh, what it really is if I waited another 5 years, another 1,000 hours of real life time it would require to max again. Because then we'll have, the Hunter Sailing,
Yeah.
Raid 7, and Bofa 2.
I mean, we already kind of have Bofa 2 and Twisted Bow. It's,
Yeah.
even though Twisted
Shout
Bow came
out
out first.
shout out Missouri making the as pre-nerd.
Sorry, you're cutting a little bit again. You said
Oh, sorry.
shout out sorry for what?
Missouri, with its range strength bonus, makes it so that the blowpipe is just as good as pre-nerf.
Oh my god, does it really?
It does.
Damn.
This game is so fun to play and just even laugh and watch the timeline of things. Like, what a blast!
It is quite the trip sometimes. Well, we're almost reaching our 2-hour mark. So I'll tell you what. I got one parting question left, and then we will take off.
Sounds great.
My parting question is the first time I've asked this to anybody, but something I do want to ask more. Where do you see yourself with this game or in life in the next 5 years? Do you see yourself still playing RuneScape, or do you see yourself moving on past this, moving on to different things?
I think it was the first thing that we said when we started the podcast, so it's fitting to end with it. I'm not going fucking anywhere unless the community up and down. This game has so many fun updates and things that make me want to scream at my computer, you know,
Mm-hmm.
over the years, but it is the community that, and it is 5 years, 10 years until we migrate to a new game in the community. Um, as far as real life things, next 5 years, continuing on with what I'm doing. I mean, I think a lot of my IR, um, the same way that I interact with people on, and just cultivating community is I'm on this planet and why I am in Gillinor. And so I hope to continue to do that here and forever.
Awesome. I love the response. Love spending this time talking to you. We'll have to do this again, maybe in the cord with some other people.
Absolutely.
Not even recording, just hanging out, talking, chatting.
It's been a blast. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you so much for being on. With that, thank you everybody for listening. Please, if you enjoyed the video, like that video, go follow Buddha's Twitch. You never know when he's going to go live for another 3 to 4 days in a row. I'm going to link everybody we've talked about pretty much in this video. So you got Tro, Chocobo, Tedious. Does Iron on a PC have a YouTube
He's
channel?
got a Twitter. I'll supply some Twitter links to some of the community persons we've
That,
talked about as well.
that'd be great. And if you want me to link the lobster court as well, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right. Well, thank you again, Buddha. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Love ya.
Love you too.